Well, transfer news is started to heat up, but it comes with a couple of caveats. We've got League Cup semi-final draw information and plenty more in today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls on another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining me every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for tuning in. Incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week. It's Friday, the final Friday before Christmas. Plenty of excitement, I'm sure, amongst families and friends around the world, of those that are indeed celebrating and looking forward to the festivities that are indeed to come. And hopefully Arsenal will continue to deliver over this festive period. We're obviously playing tomorrow at Selhurst Park and the last chance before Christmas to pick up 3 more points and recover our league form to a degree as well. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning to Shari and Matt G. We've got Carlton and Martin and Rich, Arasilki, Naz, Barry, Paul, Stephen, Dave, Edison and Glenn, Stevie and Damien and Black Shine. We've got Jitty and Mark. We've got Knowledge. We've got Morgie and Paul and Carl and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Incredibly appreciated as per. Please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never, ever need to miss one. But you know it's the same time every day, so you shouldn't have any excuses anyway not to be right here. You can even set your own personal alarms. Right, without further ado, let's jump into today's stories, and we start with the League Cup draw. Arsenal will indeed play Newcastle United in the League Cup semi-final, meaning that Liverpool will be facing Tottenham. Arsenal's first game against the Magpies will take place at home. That is when the first game will be played. That first fixture is set to be put in kind of the gap that we'll see between, just double checking on this, it'll be Saturday from the January 4th when we play Brighton and Sunday, January 12th when we play Man United. It will be set at the Emirates between those two fixtures in midweek. So the week starting January 6th. It means that we have 5 home games in a row. Home to Newcastle, then home to Man United the following Saturday, home to Spurs the following Wednesday, home to Villa the following Saturday, and home to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League the following Wednesday. Arsenal then have 2 away games in a row, Wolves and Girona away from home, before then playing once again at home against Manchester City, and then the game after Man City is away to Newcastle in the League Cup semi-final second leg. Very interesting indeed. The weekend after that is the FA Cup 4th round, should Arsenal make it through. There is opportunity for a North London derby in the final, although I think the bookies will have down an Arsenal-Liverpool final set in place. But Arsenal's progression is by no means guaranteed. Newcastle have already beaten Arsenal so far this season. It's an opportunity for revenge. And Newcastle will have their own issues to deal with as well, though, frustratingly, I need to change the... We've seen that Fabian Schär, Guimaraes, and Fabian Schär are indeed suspended for this game. They've picked up the relevant number of bookings so that they will not be involved in the first leg of this game, giving Arsenal something of a boost in that game. It's annoying that I guess the first game is at home because it means Arsenal will need to go and get a result away from home and to progress through to the final in that competition. It's a midweek trip for fans and myself up to the northeast for a game as well, and a long train home, of course, in the evening, if indeed there are any trains back in the evening at that such a time. But yes, Guimaraes and Schär suspended for this one, and something of a boost for the Gunners. Meanwhile, yesterday we saw the first of the brand new kit for 25-26, potential alleged leaks for it. As you can see on the screen, if you're listening on audio platforms, I'll do my best to describe it to you. If you think about this season's kit having a little bit too much white on it, I think this one flips the script with there being more red, far, far more red than there is white. The red kind of bleeds over kind of the usual outline of the torso and into the sleeves, where you find yourself having the usual red Adidas triple striping as well. But that was the first leaks that we've really seen. It's not guaranteed this is what it looks like. This could be very much a mock-up and kind of an estimation based upon some of the leaks that have gone around on social media. So do not take this as a guarantee of this or what it looks like. But this is certainly one of the ones that got quite a lot of traction on social media yesterday. I think it's nice if it's going to be this, but usually we see those leaks a little bit later on, and I usually have a couple of people that are usually pretty good when it comes to telling me how they're real. And I just got a message from someone actually as we're live watching who usually is very good with these, saying that this is not real. So let's change the story. Yesterday, there was some kit leaks that aren't real. You may have seen this picture going around social media, but as you can see on the fly, getting a little bit of a hint from a contact of mine who's very good with this sort of thing, suggesting indeed that these are not real. Moving into those transfer news, and the biggest story, I suppose, of yesterday was Sami Mokbel's assessment of Arsenal's situation. And it is a positive, and I think for some will be a frustrating piece of news. The wider context of the story and the more broad context is that there is an acceptance within the club that there is indeed a need for a brand new striker to be signed. However, that is indeed in place for the summer, not for the January transfer window. The other downside to this is that, according to Sami Mokbel of the Mail, that Victor Gyökeres seemingly will not, I'm going to repeat that, not be that figurehead. Interest in the Swedish striker has diminished over this season, with their concerns that he may not be able to transfer his goal-scoring rate to the Premier League from Portugal. The two players that Sami does mention that Arsenal's interest does remain headstrong is Benjamin Sesko, being one of them, who I personally think needs to do a lot more before justifying that kind of position, and potentially being Arsenal's key marquee centre-forward signing. And the other one, of course, as you all very much should know by now, is Alexander Isak. Isak being the key other name in the fold, a player that Arsenal and Arteta in particular really does appreciate, and whose future is by no means guaranteed with Newcastle, and that potentially he'll be looked at as somebody that could be looked at as someone that they would that Arsenal would want to be looking to potentially sign. So there you go. That's the latest on Arsenal's striker situation. But there is growing hope that a centre forward is indeed wanted by Arsenal in the summer. Mikel Arteta will face the press today ahead of Arsenal's game against Crystal Palace in the Premier League tomorrow afternoon at 5:30 p.m. We're hoping to get some updates perhaps on Declan Rice. Hoping to get some updates on Ricardo Calafiori as well. Fingers crossed that we get some positive outcomes for those guys and they can be involved in the game. Arsenal expected to go stronger than, of course, they did in the League Cup match on Wednesday night, but we still don't know who's going to be playing. Gabriel Jesus, of course, fantastic hat-trick in midweek, as I think, for most of us at least, now earned the right to start that next game. Whether that's with Kai Havertz or not, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But certainly I think we can all agree that he's deserving of that starting spot for at least the next game. Arteta, though, facing the press this afternoon. So make sure you look out for that. We'll have all coverage of that, full wordage over on the football.london website. Right, let's go to part two and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part two of the show where we tackle your questions and more. We did run out of foreign shirts to highlight, so you may just see me this morning as something of a floating head because we are wearing the camouflage Maharishi shirt that released, I think it was the season before last. But I have just acquired the brand new kind of khaki Arsenal tracksuit bottoms, which go perfectly as the fashionista that I clearly am with this top, which I'm very pleased about indeed. Yeah, it's we're back to the Arsenal hype now. We'll see if we can get some wacky Arsenal shirts in between now and Christmas Day. It is the 20th of December, which means we head over to the number 20 on the board. which is good. Lovely stuff. Oh, it's a dairy milk. Happy days. I've really struck lucky with this year's advent calendar. Happy days indeed. Okay. Shall we jump into chat? Well, before I do, I want to do a little bit of something I might tend to call, I'll try and put a radio voice on for this. We're going to call it Troll Watch, where we look at the latest hilarious attempts to troll on social media. A couple of days ago, there was a comment left on the video, which was like, oh, I've never unsubscribed from the channel faster. All of these adverts are mad. And do you know what's really funny? Is I went back to check and I'd actually forgot to monetize that morning show, which just goes to show that it's hilarious, isn't it? And I think it maybe is something of a lesson that we shouldn't be taking as much notice as some of the comments. I also noticed that, as you know, whenever I hop on some other channels, you get people that are like dedicated haters to TGT because they're usually blocked. And I've noticed a couple of comments that are like commenting on some of the things they were saying. So I know you're still watching, even though you're blocked. And that brings a Christmas smile to my face. Anyway, let's jump into the chat and tackle some of these comments, shall we? Paul says, how good would a Spurs final be? I mean, potentially great, equally potentially terrifying as to what it could bring forwards if Arsenal were the team to allow Spurs to end their unbeaten, rather not unbeaten, the complete opposite, their unwinning run. That would be, yeah, very, very frustrating indeed. Gavin says, give us a 12, Tom. I mean, I can't. I can only give you a dairy milk. Oh, I'm on it this morning. Dylan says, why don't we look at Inter Milan striker Marcus Thuram? I think he would be a very good option as well. He's done very well, of course, since moving to Serie A and doing very well with Inter, indeed. EK says, would it be a bad idea to play Odegaard on the left side of midfield? He could unlock Martinelli. Saka is a talented enough player to do the damage on the right with Rice or Marino. I think it's something that we want to see is more variation in the positioning of Odegaard and where indeed he is kind of put also. Rich says, Tom, would you turn down a channel sponsorship from Cadbury's Fruit and Nut? I can eat around the fruit and nut. I can eat around it. And Cadbury's might send me along some normal Cadbury's chocolate as well. You never know. You never know. Nick says it would almost guarantee a trophy because they're allergic to winning anything. Oh, I hope you've not spoken too soon. Pew 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 says, hi, Tom. If Arsenal signed Isak before Newcastle and had the same similar injury record, would you be satisfied or would we be wanting to go for a replacement? I mean, he picked up 20 Premier League goals last season. So I think Arsenal would be very pleased with a striker that was managing to pick up 20 Premier League goals while also having depth in that position in the form of Havertz. If Jesus is still around, also players coming through the ranks. And Arteta saying that Waneri could play as a 9, which obviously raises up other questions also. Alex says, I'd rather have got Spuds in the semi-final than risk them winning it against us in the final. Maybe. I do think this is probably the most favourable draw in terms of in terms of who you look at as the opponent. Spurs, when you play them, I wanted them, but there is also something we have to factor in, which is the derby factor, which is form goes out the window completely. Vacan says, AFTV are saying there are reports in Spain that could suggest we are signing Alberto Melero tomorrow. Tomorrow, as in we're going to sign a player outside of the transfer window. Can't do that. Let's have a quick look and search the guy's name. Alberto Melero. What's the source? I reckon it's probably not AFTV who are the actual source of this information. Let's scroll down this article. I'm sure it's Arsenal have cast their eyes to Alberto Melero. A Spanish media source sensationally claimed this week that Melero has reached an agreement. It doesn't say what the source is. The source is it's our good friends at Fijajes. Fijajes have reported, who never get anything inaccurate at all, Arsenal are set to sign Alberto Melero. Can Fijajes redeem themselves? Can this be a redeeming article for the widely discredited article that I've seen so many Arsenal links not happen? A rival, I think, only Steve K when it comes to reporting on Arsenal transfers. I'm not entirely Vacan confident that is the case, but who knows? Maybe We'll see. Isn't it funny though? It's like we see those reports. It was like the story we saw. I told you about the other week, where it's like Arsenal was supposedly going to play a friendly just for Max Dowman to play with the senior team, which was a load of bollocks. And we're now seeing potentially this article come up. How many times does it take before these stories from certain outlets just gets to a stage where they aren't referenced anymore? I guess not. I guess it's never going to get to that stage, is it? Because news keeps getting recycled and aggregated and used, and news is news, and headlines become headlines. It's why you haven't seen me put it in my show, because why would I, when we've seen so little kind of credible stories come out from specific sources. Jimmy says, why do you never eat the chocolate live on it? Because I need to talk for half an hour, and frankly, if I eat the chocolate, I'm not going to enjoy it. I prefer to savor it if it's a bit of Cadbury's chocolate, because you have to let it melt. You can't just scoff it down. So yeah, no, that's why I don't eat them on air, Jimmy, because it would be a waste and it would go far too quickly. Kieran says, it seems most feasible. We get a mid-price signing for one of the most expensive, for one, and an expensive for the other regarding left winger 9. If this is true and the mid price is 40 to 70 million, do you want a 9 or a left winger as the mid price? I think you can get a really good left winger for that mid price, as you've talked about. I think that Ademola Lookman would fall into that category. I think that Alex Bainer would fall into that category. I think that Bino Gittins would fall into that category. So you can get a really good left winger for that price tag, and then you go for the big money Isak or somebody like that. M says Sesko has 5 goals and 2 assists in 14 games. Gyökeres has 18 goals and 1 assist in 14 games. I suppose the argument would be, of course, first of all, the league, but the difference between the Bundesliga and the Portuguese league, of course, and the dominance that Leipzig have had this season has been very poor. Leipzig have been pretty poor. Sporting have been very dominant. So there is, of course, context. It's not just about how many goals and assists both players have. There's something to be said about that. Brendan says TC is going to be starting an ASMR chocolate eating channel. No one needs to hear that. No one at all needs to hear that. Burris says, can you think of a veteran but lethal striker that we could buy in January before getting Isak in the summer? Like when we got Jorginho in January, but we signed Rice. Chris Wood. Chris Wood's been incredibly potent for Nottingham Forest this season. He's probably the only veteran centre forward I can think of in terms of kind of who you could bring in to guarantee your goals. Joey says Benzema. I mean, arguably it's going to cost you stupid money, so not worth it at all. Veteran strikers, though, I'm not sure that is the way to go for Arsenal at all. Stu says, context can only go so far when there is that much of a gap in their output. Gyökeres is also performing in the Champions League as well. I guess there's also an age factor for Arsenal as well. That age side of things too, where Gyökeres will be turning, 27? He indeed does turn 27 at the start of next season, whereas Šeško's only 22, or will be 22 come the start of next season. So I guess that also factors into some of the decision making as well. You've got a 5-year gap between the two players, and if the club see a higher ceiling in Sesko, look, I agree with you. I'd rather assign Gyökeres, but I'm just trying to make sense of who indeed of why the club might be looking away from Gyökeres. Soup says the biggest concern now with Isak is his price. He has a long contract, and Newcastle will be digging in their heels and would be willing to pay the required 130 to 150 million. I don't know if it would cost that much. I guess we would have to wait and see. But yeah, let's wait and see what happens with that striker position in the summer. Joey says Benzema is apparently earning 100 million euros a year in Saudi. Even if he had to just pay half of his wages, he would be a top earner by a mile. Alex says, I feel like any striker would do, any squad option with different qualities that can play in front of goal. Just get them in. We will win everything. It's no guarantee. And teams have won leagues without, that obvious centre forward. Liverpool right now are winning the league currently without a world-class centre forward. It's not a guarantee that this is what takes you to a title. Man City did it, with, ironically, Jesus. You could look at the time they had, basically De Bruyne playing a false 9 position for the majority of a season. And then you look at Liverpool winning it with Roberto Firmino. So it's not a guarantee that these, top centre forwards are going to even take you to a title. Rahul says, Tom, what are your thoughts on signing Kudus in January? Recent reports that West Ham might be ready to sell him if a good offer comes in. Is there a possibility it could happen? I mean, there's always a chance, Rahul. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's categorically not going to happen. But I think the price tag of Kudus, of course, they have an 85 million release clause in the summer. Will they hold out for that? Potentially. Would they accept something lower? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Stizzy says, any progress from Arsenal on Lookman? No, I mean, Stizzy, there isn't progress at all. There's not even been really any concrete links whatsoever. He's just a player that I personally would like to see Arsenal go for. I can't tell you that there's any suggestion at all that Arsenal are going to be moving for Ademola Lookman. There's just a lot of talk from Arsenal kind of content creators that he's potentially a candidate that we would like to see maybe Arsenal pursue. Ridiculous said, Tom, never happening, but if Harry Kane was available with a reasonable fee, what's a reasonable fee for a 33-year-old Harry Kane? 31. He's only 31 to be. I thought he was older than that. So, I mean, what's a reasonable fee? He's still going to cost you loads and loads of money. It's going to cost a lot of wages. And he's not, I don't think you get the return necessarily. I mean, he joins Bayern in their first season. They don't win the league. It's not a guarantee you add these players. And he's a bit allergic to trophies as well, which also makes a bit of a difference. 5 years ago, different conversation, but not now. Noah says, hi, Tom. Cool to see the show live. First time I've ever caught a morning show, and it's 2 a.m. over here. Thank you, Noah, for your very kind support and listenership at such a silly time in the morning. I wonder what's got you out at 2 a.m. in the morning. Jabu says, here's the plan. We put in a bid for Isak, turn his head, so much so that he's excited for the Newcastle EFL Cup squad. Think, guys. Think ahead. Yes, tapping up players. Definitely a legal part of football. Not. Kieran says, thoughts on Spurs versus United? It was superb viewing. I mean, for the neutral, brilliant game. For any supporter of either team, I mean, slightly less so in the case of Spurs because they won it, absolute nightmare. Horrendous. Defending, mistakes. I mean, Liverpool have literally just got to take pot shots at Foster from wherever they can get, or Forster, sorry, wherever they can get an opportunity to, because my goodness me, have you ever seen a more nervous-looking goalkeeper in a Premier League kind of two Premier League sides facing one another in a cup quarter-final? That was, I think Liverpool are going to absolutely steamroll Spurs. But you never know. They play them this weekend, of course. We get a bit of a preview, indeed, on what's going to be going down in the Premier League this weekend between Liverpool and Spurs. So maybe we'll get a bit of an insight. I'll do a quick run through of those games that are playing this week, and we'll do it again tomorrow, of course, as well. But Villa are playing Manchester City at Villa Park. I've never seen a team dominate Man City quite like we saw Villa do last season, but both of those teams are in something of a rut at the moment. So big game for both of those sides. Brentford taking on Nottingham Forest. Ipswich play Newcastle. West Ham play Brighton, and Crystal Palace play Arsenal. Liverpool playing Spurs on Sunday in a 4:30 kickoff at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Oliver says, any news on Cunha from Wolves? He would be an amazing addition. Again, we've heard no links. As I say, Oliver, and I've said to this to others, like, it's all well and good having conversations about kind of these players that his names are emerging, but I'm only going to include them in the first part of the show if I think the link is in any way credible. I could end up being proven wrong, but if I've not included it in the first part of the show, it's because I just don't think the source is going to be credible in any way. Sometimes I might miss them, which is why I appreciate you bringing them up. But when these sources are some of the ones that we've discussed today that don't have very good track records whatsoever, ultimately, we're just not going to be looking at too many of those whatsoever. But I think Cunha would be a very astute signing for Arsenal potentially in the summer window as well. Ali says we need a striker and a left winger. The idea of Arsenal signing a centre forward this winter, I think, is very, very, very unlikely. But a winger, maybe. Juice WRLD says, how's your FPL doing? Not great, mate. Not great. It's got a little bit better. I've made some changes. I brought some players in. I got rid of Haaland. Saka and Palmer have been delivering numbers. It's not been amazing. Nicholas Jackson's been delivering a fair amount as well. But Lewis Hall got me a big haul of points at the weekend as well. So it's turned around a little bit. Arthur says, anyone else just get the feeling we're signing no one? Just don't see any big signings, especially from other leagues. And Edu not in the house anymore either. Chunho says, tough games for all title contenders this weekend. I reckon both Liverpool and City could drop points. Can only pray that we take advantage. Chelsea, meanwhile, are away at Everton as well, which isn't the easiest of games either. So hopefully they can get a result and pay Arsenal back for their dropping of points for us last weekend. Wilson, so who do you prefer, Kudus or Lookman? I prefer Lookman. The reason why I prefer Lookman is I think he's doing it over a longer period of time. I think that, he's showing he can produce in the Champions League. He's showing he can produce in a Europa League final. He's continued his fine form into the season. His numbers are better. His discipline is better. And I think Kudus' stock has fallen a little bit this season. The numbers are absolutely night and day. Kudus ranks in the 40th percentile for non-penalty goals. Lookman ranks in the 99th. Shot creating actions, Lookman is 93rd. Kudus is 53rd. If we look at assists, 86th for Lookman, 48th for Kudus. If we look at progressive passes received and kind of the positions where they're taking them up, Lookman 90th percentile, Kudus 48th. And Kudus has more minutes as well. 2,951 for Kudus, 2,570 for Lookman. I think Lookman would be the better signing of the two. I think that would be really important to put on. Of course, in terms of his most, Kudus' kind of biggest, his biggest kind of asset is his ability to take players on and to beat them. And he has a 99th percentile for successful take-ons, 4.33 successful take-ons per 90. Lookman's successful take-ons is 70th percentile with just 2.0 per 90. So, I mean, Mohamed Kudus, in terms of taking players on and beating them, yes, he is ranking higher. But that's really the only one in terms of what Kudus can actually battle Lookman for. He does work hard defensively, Kudus as well. He's in the 96th percentile for tackles. But everything else is all in the green for Lookman. I think Lookman is the obvious choice between the two right now. I think he just picked up the African Player of the Year award as well. Very, very impressive has Lookman been over not just this season, but last season and to a degree the season before that as well. King in the chat, hello, all the way from Malawi. Thank you so much for joining in, mate. Really appreciate you being here. Ty says, serious question. Did Edu leave over arguments on transfers? Marino reported not favoured by Edu, only Arteta, and then Sterling joins and doesn't look favoured by Arteta either. Seems forced upon him. No, it turns out that this is very much Edu wanting to be a kind of figure, a kind of more overseeing, more influential figurehead in a project. And that wasn't going to be the case with Arsenal, because obviously Arteta's presence is quite significant. He wasn't being considered for the CEO position. And I think that he wanted to move into a role that would allow him to oversee a larger kind of project and oversee things more unchallenged. And I think that's why he made that move. So there you go. Gooner Jonesy says, Lookman has been terrible in the Premier League. He would do nothing. Shall we have a quick look? Shall we look, man, at the last time he played in the Premier League? Because the last time he did play a game in the Premier League was in 2021, in the 2020-21 season, which is a time he spent... the 21-22 season when he was on loan at Leicester. So we're talking over 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago. And for some reason, people are using that as kind of a no category. Not a guy who played in the Premier League 3 years ago. Don't want him, which is nuts when you think about it, isn't it? 22-23 season, he was on loan from Leipzig, I think it was, at Leicester. 21-22 season, here we go. Because the following season, he went to Serie A, scored 13 goals and got 8 assists. In 26 Premier League games, he scored 6 goals and played 1,457 minutes. So he was mainly, he was starting a fair few games, but he was also coming off the bench as a substitute. If you do that maths, what was his Premier League return record for a very poor Leicester team? 6 divided by 26. So it was a goal every 4 games for a struggling Leicester team. So, I mean, if you want to use that as any kind of metric to measure why you should sign a player 3 years later, feel free. But I don't think so, Jonesy. I think that's certainly not a reason why you rule out a guy that has since gone on to win the things that he's won, to become arguably Africa's best player over the last year, to return the goals that he's returned in Serie A, but also in the Champions League, score a hat-trick in a Europa League final, to score against the bigger sides that he scored against, perform against the teams that he has indeed performed against. I just can't get on board with this idea that because he wasn't amazing when he was on loan at a really poor Leicester side, that's not a reason why you sign him. Ty says, my response to that was Lookman. My response to that Lookman comment would be, so you wouldn't have bought Salah based on his form at Chelsea. It's a brilliant example, isn't it? It's absolutely the perfect example. It's really important that is the case. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Someone spamming the chat. I mean, ironically, the person spamming the chat is asking a question I've already answered. Please don't spam the chat box with questions, especially ones I've already answered in the show. Joey says, are we talking about the Lookman who scored a hat-trick against the team that would have went invincible last year if it wasn't for his hat-trick? In all competitions invincible. They went invincible in the Bundesliga by Leverkusen. And yes, Joey, that is exactly who we're talking about. Stu says, we've talked about that. It's the person who's spamming the chat. Jones says, I'm not using that at all. My point is he plays in an inferior league. If he returns to the Premier League, he will be average. Gunnar Jonesy, what do you think about Mohamed Salah example? Poor in the Premier League, goes to the Italian league, plays for Roma, smashes it, where Lookman is playing in Serie A for Atalanta, smashes it, comes back to the Premier League, brilliant. So what do you make of that example and showcasing what indeed that means for a player like that? Because I think that's a great example. Kazang says, what do you think of Martinelli, forward, Jesus on the wing and Saka? I saw this front three somewhere. Why not? I think that's the front three that potentially will... I mean, not with Jesus on the wing and Martinelli through the middle. I just don't think it's going to happen. What about Lukaku, says Multitude as well. I mean, Lukaku's numbers, he gets a lot of stick, Lukaku, right, for his numbers and his touch and things. Give you his numbers. For Everton, 17 and 38, 16 and 33, 20 and 48, 25 and 46, 26 and 39. For Man United, 27 and 51. Then he had his lower season, 15 and 45 for Man United there. Inter Milan, 34 and 51, 30 and 44. Goes for a season at Chelsea where it wasn't great, 15 and 44. Goes on loan to Inter Milan, 14 and 37, 21 in 47 for Roma, and he already has 6 in 16 for Napoli. This guy, Lukaku, has scored 306 goals in 652 games. Let's not pretend that Lukaku isn't a fantastic goal scorer, because he is. He has 85 goals for Belgium in 120 games. Lukaku is one of the most disrespected strikers on the planet. And he shouldn't be. Because despite the fact that, yes, he's had some comical misses. I don't put that, I'm not ignoring that. But his goal rate has been excellent. Look, he will retire as one of the best goal scorers of his generation. Without a doubt. He's 31 years old now. 300 goals, just over 600 games. There are not many players on earth who play in the Premier League and in Serie A and return 300 plus goals. Like, I'm not talking about like this idea that we should sign him. That's not what I'm saying. But Lukaku was without a doubt one of the most overly disrespected centre forwards on the planet. And I think it's probably because he played for Chelsea and Man United, and that doesn't help. But let's not pretend that he also didn't score loads of goals in the Premier League, because he did. He scored 87 goals in 166 games, while with West Brom and Everton, which is nuts. He then went and scored 42 goals in 96 games for Man United, 64 goals in 95 games for Inter Milan. And then while with Napoli now, he's already scored 16, 21 in 47 for Roma. Like, don't pretend. Like, let's not take the mick out of players like Lukaku who have done brilliant things in both the Premier League and, of course, in the in Serie A as well. He's won the Serie A. He's won the Coppa Italia. He came runners up in the Champions League. Runners up in the Europa League as well. He's won the FIFA Club World Cup with Chelsea. Let's not pretend that this guy hasn't had a really good career, because he has. without a doubt. And he's definitely, he's past his, he's 31 now. He's moving into the twilight years of his career. And I'm not saying that we should sign him. No one's saying that. Someone's using Lukaku as an example of a player who's scored really well in Serie A, didn't do too well in the Premier League. And I say he actually did quite well in the Premier League. He scored a lot of goals in the Premier League, actually. And people are very quick to forget that, I think. Let's go to Super. It says the Italian league has historically been a more difficult league to score goals in. While there are exceptions, usually goal scorers translate from Serie A to the Premier League quite well. Italian league known for its defending. So the idea that you would... I hate the whole inferior league argument because there's just so many different examples, isn't there, of players who have moved and done really, really well since moving from that. Still waiting, Jonesy, for a response. I'm curious to what you think about the Mohamed Salah example in response to your point of degrading those players playing in Italy. Andy says, my cousin is a Juve fan and really rates Vlahovic. Obviously, Vlahovic is the other name that comes up a lot when we're talking about transfers. I'm not that keen. I think that I want a player that really would be set on joining Arsenal. He wanted to go to Juventus. He wasn't ever keen on joining Arsenal. I want a player that really wants to play for the club as well. I think that's a really important point when it comes to signing players. You want players that really want to succeed with you. And he's already rejected Arsenal. So why on earth should we still go for him? I personally wouldn't. Arteta says players need an environment which could help them. A case in point is a young Thierry Henry needed Arsenal to become a great. Imagine if he went somewhere else. Who knows? The rest is history. It may not have been different whatsoever. I think it depends on the club as well, not just the league. It depends on who you're playing for and kind of the system that you're built around. Like, I was never that keen on signing Wilfried Zaha because I always felt like, and Ivan Toney similar as well, because I feel like the systems at Brentford and Crystal Palace were very much kind of tailored to trying to maximise that individual player. Whereas if you move to Arsenal, you're going to have to be a collaborative figure. You're not the main man anymore. You're going to be someone who's working in a team. So I never was that keen on signing Toney or Zaha because I never thought it felt like it fit. Whereas if you look at someone like Mbeumo at Brentford, he had to play a supporting role to Toney. And now Toney's moved on. He's actually built a career with players like Wissa, who's also done really, really well since Toney's moved on. And it's more collaborative. That's why I like Mbeumo far more than I've ever liked the idea of signing Ivan Toney. I just think it's a much, much better fit because it shows that player can work in a supporting role. And a player, of course, that can work. Jahia says, that's a lie with no context. Just that's a lie. No idea what you're talking about, Jahia, but Jahio, sorry, but please do enlighten us. I'd love to know what I've lied about. Right, let's scroll up in the chat a bit more as well, see if we've missed any comments. Carl says, how do people not rate Marino? His ability is so obviously amazing and he just hasn't gelled yet because people love making conclusions really quickly. People are willing to make themselves look silly just so they can be angry. If they haven't learned from the Havertz situation, I don't know why people are being so quick to judge on Marino at a stage where he's not even fully fit yet. Scrolling up a bit more, Lee says, I still think Liverpool will have a dip in form as we need to take advantage of that as well, potentially. Stu says, if we end up playing Spurs in the final, I'll still be confident, but the nerves will be insane. Imagine being a team breaking their trophy duck. Yeah, I would rather that not be the case. That said, I would rather play Spurs than Liverpool in the final. I absolutely would do. Marino is fine. Tom was making conclusions a week ago. What? What about Marino? Definitely wasn't multitude. I've been saying for a long period of time that people need to hold off on making these sweeping statements about Marino because he's not fit. He hasn't had a preseason. You need to allow him to bed in. So, no, I was not making conclusions about him whatsoever a week ago. Alexis Marino reminds me of Busquets a bit. His body movement around the ball can become world class. He'll fit in. He needs time and confidence. Byron says, Tom, what's your opinion on that Bournemouth winger? I forgot the name as well. Semenyo. Of course, we've talked about him a little bit already. I think he would be a very astute, kind of Trossard-esque type signing. That's really, really important. J.S. says, I still don't understand the point in loaning out Vieira and selling Smith. Is that what? That I haven't lied about that. What's the lie? We all want to know, Jahia, what the lie is. That's what we're looking forward to knowing. What's the lie? Tell us. We'd love to know. And the reason we loaned out Smith Rowe and Vieira is because they weren't offering us anything. Smith Rowe, didn't fit in the system that we wanted to play and asked to leave. And so we allowed that to happen. We were ultimately looking also at Vieira, a player who offered very little. I don't have any issue in those players leaving. We've got a really good fee for Smith Rowe, a really good sell-on clause on top of that as well. Vieira's gone to Porto. He had to improve his value, and he's doing that. He's scoring a few goals now for Porto. He's playing relatively regularly, and when he comes back, hopefully Arsenal can make some money on him in the summer. That's what we want. Multitudes resorted to shouting in the chat. The system we want to play that involves no goals from open play, despite the fact that Arsenal scored 3 against Palace on Wednesday. Apparently that's the lie. Hussein says, our outgoings were never an issue. They were never going to play or make differences anyway, unfortunately. Twerk for Work says, Tom, I joined late. So would I be able to start again, please? Yes, hold on. 2 seconds. No, of course I'm not going to start from the beginning. You can rewind. One Tom Soup says, thoughts on the links to Adam Wharton and Dewsbury Hall. Thoughts on potentially signing them as potential options for Arsenal. I think Adam Wharton, of course, has been a really good option for Palace. We've not seen him, although, that much recently. I think when it comes to like the young options, he's definitely up there with players that we're looking at potentially using. Multitude says, we scored goals from open play on Wednesday after 7 weeks. I'm just going to use my time machine, go back 1 week before the Palace game to Monaco, where we then scored 3 goals from open play. It's really falling apart for you, Multitude, today. It's not looking great. Byron says, I would love Vieira to come back and play. He's a good player, just needs confidence and the manager to put his arm around him as well. I just think that the time has kind of passed now for Vieira, and that ship has sort of sailed. Paul says, Tom, this is how we sort out Havertz differences out. If your boy doesn't get 20 Premier League goals, you have to do a show in a full Spurs kit. Look, Paul, you've given me plenty of money so far this season trying to bash Havertz and not been doing too well at it. But I'll keep accepting it. That's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. Multitude says, I was only thinking about the Premier League. 7 weeks ago was what Multitude claimed, that we hadn't scored a Premier League goal from open play. So if we go back 7 weeks, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 1st of November. Now, I can tell you that Arsenal played against West Ham on the 30th of November and scored not just 1, not just 2. Actually, it was 2. We scored 2 goals from open play in that game. So again, Multitude, I don't mind people coming for me. I don't mind people trying to prove me wrong, but don't make yourself look so silly by being so proven wrong so easily. It just always looks so funny. If you want to come with facts and evidence, that's fine. And if you want to try and prove me wrong, I welcome it. Challenge me. I'm up for it. I invite people on the show every week to do so. Shall we see how many goals we've actually scored from open play since the 7 weeks ago that was claimed? So 7 weeks ago was the 1st of November, which was a really bad month for us. Now, Martinelli, of course, scored a fantastic goal from open play against Chelsea. That's 1. Saka scored from open play against Nottingham Forest. That's 2. Thomas Partey was his goal from open play. I'm trying to think. What was the goal that he scored against Forest? Partey's goal. Was it a header? I feel like it was a shot. Let's not count it. I'll wait till you guys tell me in the chat. Was Partey's goal against Forest from open play? Remind me what goal it was. I can't remember. Nwaneri's definitely was. Brilliant goal. So that's at least 3. Then we go to Sporting. Martinelli from open play. That's 4. Havertz from open play. That's 5. Gabriel's was a header, to be fair to him. Saka was a penalty. Trossard, that's 6. We're up to 6 now. Let's go up a little bit more. Let's go to West Ham. As we discussed, Trossard's goal, brilliant goal. That's 7. Ødegaard penalty. Havertz is from open play. That's 8. We might even have 9 if someone tells me 25-yard shot from Partey. So there you go. That's 9. We're still going. Manchester United, Timber. Header from a corner, Saliba was a set piece, so multitude there. He's getting a little bit happy. Fulham as well, of course, Saliba, that header from a corner in that game. Monaco, Saka, open play. That's 10. Havertz, of course, open play. That's 11. Saka as well from open play. That's 12. Then we go to Palace. Jesus, 3 goals, all from open play. Fantastic. That's 15. So despite the fact the multitude said we've not scored a goal in open play in 7 weeks, that's 15. I hope that you have had a fantastic show. Enjoy yourselves on this very good Friday. I will speak with you tomorrow morning. We'll be looking ahead to the next Arsenal fixture, which of course is at away this time to Selhurst Park. Let's see if Arsenal can add to their 15-goal haul from open play. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. Let's drop that mic. And as always, up the Arsenal.